I don't really know how to do this, how to start a story, how to start a story tied to a woodworking video that has nothing to do with the woodworking, but at the same time has everything to do with the woodworking. And so I was pacing through my shop, as I do, when I don't know what to do next. Specifically, what I mean when I say what to do next is I haven't yet interpreted the energy coursing through my body that makes me feel like I need to do something. Not out of urgency. Very specifically, I'm talking about a feeling of needing to do something, as in work that keeps me on my path. And then, yeah, we can get into a philosophical discussion about what my path means. But I'm starting to learn how to identify what it means for me. And as I was listening and interpreting some of this energy that's coursing through me, that's very tied to being in the present moment. It's not the whole thing, but it's very tied to it. I reached for a book that I hadn't picked up in a long time. It was recommended to me by my therapist at the time, and it's called Drinking from the River of Light by Mark Nepo. I don't know how to say his last name. I should look that up. And I flipped to a random page, and this chapter is called As a Tuning Fork. It's pretty crazy because what's been on my mind and a possible topic of this video has been about that kind of tuning fork idea from another piece of material known as The Creative Act by Rick Rubin that I would highly recommend any artist specifically, but anybody who's just more curious about how the world works in and outside of art. Anyway, so I had been thinking about so much of the positive reflections I'd had from listening to The Creative Act and feeling like I wanted to use that as a starting point to introduce myself or express how I look at the world now compared to when I was working a 9-to-5 job, filming what you see here, and what else is different between those two scenarios. But I picked up this random book because I was listening to that energy. And when I was reading this, it was at a time my life was changing quickly. And I mostly just felt lost for a lot of reasons. And one of the things that I had been trying in my life to see if it was a potential behavior that might assist in the self-care of myself. I had started reading and not caring about highlighting pages, not caring about marking the books that I was reading from. That was a really hard hurdle to get over for whatever reason, that for reasons this reflection and this video are not about. But for whatever reason, this chapter of this book that I picked up and randomly turned to a page that reminded me of something else that is very much aligned with where my head has been at. I have highlighted pages, and I'm going to read to you what the highlights are. A lot of the chapters in this book, which I really like, are kind of, they're setting you up for a reflection. And then these chapters don't really read as poems, they read as articles or arguments, or here's a thought framework potentially, and then sometimes there's a personal anecdote or some other referential material to support poetic claim that's being made on the truth of the natural world. It's hard to sum up something or somebody or any of their work, but I'm doing my best. And I find it pretty interesting how much just the things that I highlighted cut through the noise. And I think that's exactly what scares me about my nature side, is how good it is at cutting through the noise and where that leaves me. Here we go. Once on the mend, I realized I wasn't just talking to myself. I had begun a conversation with the capital U universe. Of course, I'd inevitably miss because the only things worth saying are unsayable. Why couldn't I express what I was seeing and feeling? Why was I always missing? These things were so clear to me, and yet I couldn't render them accurately. What was I doing wrong? Now I accept that the original vision is never meant to be captured, but is a shimmering conduit through which we can only retrieve expressions that might point to all that is unsayable. That might reveal all the ways we're connected. That might pay tribute to the web of essence that informs existence. In this playing is the fire of joy, which can light up all other hearts by its touch. It opens a window into the mystery, honest, accepting, and loving. Through such courage, we can remove the veils that cover us long enough to stir our hearts into wakefulness. And just before I had picked this book up while listening to the energy going through me as I'm pacing my shop this morning, trying to figure out how I can get myself into a state of consciousness where I'm comfortable delivering a message recorded in a YouTube video for the public to hear forever, and how much anxiety that normally causes me. And right now I feel calm and wanting to figure out what I can possibly say about my business and what it is and what it means to me, and introduce myself. And I was led to this. And by the way, as a tuning fork, this pulled from Mark Nepo. It's got a little poem before the main section that I'm just reading now. An artist listens to a song in the heart and creates from that, by Robert Henry. That pretty much sums up what's going on with my woodworking business. And just following that energy that's pulling me toward something. Sometimes I can picture what that something is. Sometimes I cannot picture it and just have a magnetic of being magnetized towards something bigger that I'm a part of, and it's a part of me. And when I heed its call, I end up losing things. Probably not where you thought I was going. And I found one really important true thing from this, and how beautiful it is that the losing of things is creating wealth in my life as fast and as differently as I'm losing things, to make space for the things that were actually meant for me. It's been amazing to me to see that my version of surrender kind of looks like surrendering from nurture and accepting and learning more about my nature. Furthermore, and even more surprising to me, has been realizing that I have the ability to pretty consciously choose if I want to behave in alignment with my nurture or in alignment with my nature. And the surprising thing is that in order to be at peace with being able to choose, there's a lot of grief that I've had to go through around the nature side of me having been intentionally held back from being developed by the world that we live in. And I spend a lot of time, or I have spent a lot of time, trying to figure out, other than teaching you about the woodworking that I'm doing in these videos, which is what's modeled. What would I actually want to talk about? And I get trapped, or I feel trapped, because of nurture and how, as humans, we go about things because we have belief systems and or other systems that tell us how we should do things. And the nature side of us doesn't care about how, it just cares about whether we do it or not. And in the journey of mental health and holistic wellness for me, the how certainly matters, but when I look at times where I'm not doing well, especially mentally, it's because I'm not doing things. It doesn't matter the how. And I can't do things because my nature side hasn't been developed. We have a hesitance around this nature aspect of ourselves, completely of our own doing, because the how does matter, but in order to develop the nature side, we have to let go of the how. But we were, or a lot of us, were never given situations where we could practice not having a how in safe environments so that it might be developed in ways that do not affect anyone or anything around us negatively in the process. That's why we hesitate. We don't hesitate because we inherently think the nature side is bad. We just don't understand it and don't teach it and don't know how to develop it in safe ways. And I find that frustrating. And a lot of it's because of capitalism, and quite frankly, the nature side just isn't valued monetarily, which is also frustrating to me because I find a direct correlation on being able to express my nature side and having good mental health. But I'm always in competition for what I'm doing with my time to make a living and just dealing with life the way that most of us have to deal with it. And so for me, the last year and a half has looked a lot like resisting the nurture side of me, and put in the simplest terms that I can, and it's not all-encompassing and perfectly precise or adequately accurate even. I would separate nurture as ways of thinking or internalized thought or behaving in ways from lessons taught to me by humans, and the nature side of me as behaving in ways taught by lessons that were non-man-made or non-human in nature. And so I've been developing this nature side of me from an intuitive sense of, like I started this video, following an energy flowing inside of me and learning to sit with that and let it guide me in a way. And don't get me wrong, before I ever felt a sensation of being guided, I had to work through the urges and temptations of my nurture side to even accurately hear or interpret this energy. The nature side, a way of being that's always been there but not allowed to take the driver's position. And I think that's what I want to talk about. it's been the most instrumental and fundamental thing that I've placed my intention and attention upon to create a radical sense of balance in my life. And quite frankly, balance to me, I've always just seen as this man-made term that has a place in reflecting and looking upon the past and trying to determine how to conserve the things worth conserving into the future. But life does what it will. Balance isn't really part of the present moment. The present moment is all about the exchange of energy. And we can talk about cause and effect and maybe use the word balance to describe some of what's happening. But ultimately, balance is a goal. We feel good when we feel balanced. But when I look at myself honestly, I feel a whole lot better when the balance is actually skewed to the positive or happy or joyful side. But as I learn to express this nature side of myself that I'm learning to develop, balance is irrelevant because I can find peace in the present moment. And not all the time, but this concept of balance is really important for me to talk about because I find that in my life, the more I think about being balanced, the more I realize that that framework only exists in hindsight. And it is helpful because I can see how in the past, when it was the present for me, I wish I had a more balanced perspective to act differently in the present moment, perhaps. But that has nothing to do with evaluating the state of my life and whether or not that is perceived as balanced or not. Balance is a myth. What isn't a myth, in my own experience, is that the best good, the best or the most sense of peace that I experience comes from being able to accurately observe the position I am in the present and being able to flow between behaving in ways that nurture and nature provide and being part of an energy exchange in the present that uplifts me and helps uplift others. And I observe many people trying to talk about this and share about this, and we don't even have, it's almost like there's a language, a universal language that we all intuitively know, but we haven't come up with ways as humans to actually document whatever this language is as a universal language. And so we all speak it, but we all speak it in our own native tongue. And the best we can do is learn how to balance that language that we all inherently have with the language of nurture as a reference point, and learn how to act in our best good that uplifts ourselves and takes care of ourselves so that we may better take care and uplift others, and set the example of doing that. And at some point, to me, that is the focus of life, or at least that's been my focus. And the thing that I feel as though I'm getting pretty good at grabbing that thread and following it. And I want to share that. And I get caught and confused and filled with doubt around effectively being able to do that. And each time I realize, again, the best I can do is just continue to do that for myself and show what it looks like. And so, first full circle moment of what I'm trying to do with this video is hopefully just to let you zone out, listen to a guy talk about his experience, and also zone out. Watch him use his hands to make a piece of art that he brought into existence. Maybe you can learn how to do that if you're a woodworker here watching this video. But ultimately, I hope to be able to teach people how to get in touch with themselves by reflection. All kinds of reflection, mind you. Every time we make a connection with somebody, that's a reflection. Every time you revisit an old memory with new context, that's a reflection. Anytime you apply some learning from one situation to another, that's reflection. Anytime you tell a story and wonder why you told the story or included the detail that you did the way that you did, that's reflection. And each reflection teaches us something on a deeper level about ourselves that makes the difference between participating in the world as a passive member or a proactive one. And I think we all want to be active participants in our lives, feeling like we have agency. And I know for me, the thing that stops me from feeling that way is usually not feeling like I'd know what to do with that time if I had it. And this woodworking business to me has been making sure I have it, even though I don't have it. So let's make it, even though I don't have time to make it. And so I'm here to resist these man-made systems and man-made belief systems to be part of a world that I long for, that's synonymous with the world that's waiting for me. And I'm fascinated, endlessly fascinated with where attention and intention overlap to actually allow me to have some sense of control of meeting that convergence point where the thing that I'm a part of that's bigger than me, that's also a part of me. And at some level, that's you. And I'm a part of you and you're a part of me. And the best thing I can do for all of us is take the most care of me and what I do and how I spend my time. That brings me in full witnessing of everyday magic. And I want nothing more or less than for as many of us as possible to be able to experience that. And it starts with rest. Oh no.